Hare Krishna. So we are continuing to study chapter 2 of Srimad Bhagavad Gita. We have seen so far that Sri Krishna has presented to Arjun the nature of birth and death, that everything is in a constant change. And what is unchanging? That is the soul. The unchanging witness is the soul. So, very beautifully, Sri Krishna has presented very profound philosophical statements to help us understand. And then he also tells us that it's inevitable. It's the nature of the body to undergo transformation. What are you trying to hold? You become a dhira. A dhira is one who understands the true nature of things. And then Sri Krishna says in the next verse, Matra Sparsha, that all the experience comes from sense contact. That experience is only in the mind, it is not in the objects. And that experience is the nature of the world. That experience is a projection of your state of mind. So don't let that experience come in the way of your duty. Rise above duality. And in verse 15, Lord Krishna introduces a new goal, a higher goal to Arjun. So far, what was his goal? Kingdom, mm, family, social order, maybe even welfare of forefathers, tradition. Sri Krishna is introducing a radically higher goal of moksha. Amritatva. What is Amrit actually? Amrita means that which doesn't deteriorate or extinguish. Mrita nahi hota. Mrit means death. Amrit means one that never dies. So that is how you will become free from death. You will become eternal. So what do you think? Where is this Amritatva, this nature of being eternal? Can we get it? Can we get it somewhere? No, this nature of being Amrit is within us. We are already Amrit. But because of two problems, one is our state of mind, which makes Sukha and Dukha appear outside, and our designations, the Upadhis. We invest in our Upadhis and we look for pleasure outside. That these two coverings prevent us from seeing our true liberated self. If you remove these two coverings of upadhis and a conditioned state of mind, that's liberation. So don't think of liberation as something in the afterlife. Liberation means the ability to stabilize your mind and dissolve your false identities. Imagine how liberating, how fresh and relieving it will be. You are acting in your true self. So far, we were acting as if we are possessed. But then we'll come to realize that no, let me act in alignment with my true nature. That is liberation. So Sri Krishna calls Arjun Purusha Rishabha, the best of, you know, best among men. It indicates that Arjun has the capacity to overcome his conditioning. If it was not in one's capacity to overcome conditioning, there would be no use or purpose of teaching Bhagavad Gita. The very fact that scriptures exist and Sri Krishna is putting in time and energy to educate means we have the capacity to reform. So, therefore, he's saying you realize your true self. And that should be the motto of all of us in our lives, to live a life in its fullest potential. That's called human flourishing. So, we understand it in the spiritual dimension. That unless I experience my spiritual self, what life have I lived? Yeah, so here Sri Krishna is saying that Sukha and Dukha, we discussed that elaborately in the previous session. How Sukha and Dukha exist. Sukha and Dukha are not in a person or in a place. It is just the mind which is creating this duality, good, bad. Nothing is good or bad. Everything is just existing as an object. Yeah. So Shri Krishna is saying, what should you do? You should rise above the sukha and dukkha. Sama, sukha, sama, dukkha, sukham, dhiram. Again, the word dhira is used. In verse 13, Sri Krishna used hmm, dhiras tatra na muyate. In verse 15, he's again saying सम सुख दुखम धीरा जो सुख दुख में सम रह सकता है वो धीर कहलाता है हु इज अ धीरा धीरा द वर्ड संस्कृत वर्ड धीरा comes from the root धी which is related to buddhi. It is saying use your intelligence, Arjun. See, we might think we are ordinary beings, but from an animal's point of view, you are extraordinary. You are like God. You can do so many impossible things. So we are not ordinary. We human beings are extraordinary. And what is that one thing that makes us extraordinary? Buddhi. If we don't utilize our buddhi, we are wasting our human life. We'll remain buddhu. Yeah. So here we have to see that Sri Krishna is saying, Sukha Dukkha, we discussed, is not outside. A lot of people, most of the society, is seeking to change the external situations and people. You think you can change people? Impossible. Give it up. This is one instruction you can take home today. Give up the hope and expectation of people to change or act according to you. Why? Because they are their own mind. You cannot control your own mind, which is within you. What do you think of controlling another's mind who is outside of you? So, if you give up the idea or expectation of changing people, you will be very peaceful. Only person you can change is yourself. And if that inspires anyone else to change, that's the only hope. Okay. So Sukha and Dukkha we were discussing, they lie in the mind. And if we look for Sukha and Dukkha outside, we'll try to change the state of things and people. You should behave according to my expectations. The weather is not good, let me change it. Mm. But it was never there. It was always in the mind, and then that effort becomes futile. So we have to give up attachment to happiness. You can note down this is the root cause of our suffering. So Sri Krishna is saying Sukha, Dukkha, these are dualities. It's a package. Please don't have this false idea or fantasy that you can only have Sukha, but you can avoid Dukkha. If you are attached to Sukha, you will have to experience Dukkha. But if you choose to distance yourself from Sukha, you'll also not be required to suffer dukkha. Do you understand this point? It's very deep. Because we are attached to happiness, we also have to experience dukkha. We have to become equidistant to both sukha and dukkha. Let it come and go, seeing it as a fruition of our past karma. My previous karma have brought me this situation of sukha. Great. I'll not start identifying it. I'll not start getting into jubilation and go out of control and have a party. This is just a consequence of my past actions. Same we feel for dukkha. We don't have to create an identity around it and become a victim. It is just passing. Sri Krishna says, yes, seasons, it'll like seasons, they come and go. Don't take it too seriously. Rise above sukha and dukkha because beyond sukha and dukkha lies anand. Anand is within. Bible says salvation lies within. So the day you start turning your attention inward, that is the day you can call yourself spiritual. If you're still looking for pleasure or hope outside of you, that's materialism. The day you realize actually the only possibility and potential to experience Anand is in contact with Atman and Paramatman, not in sense contact. Whose contact will give you happiness? That is the question. Objects or Atman? So when you seek pleasure outside, that's Sukha. When you seek bliss within, that's Ananda. So we have to go beyond this, and duality is the nature of the mind. Why does duality come? Because we are in avidya. Remember, we discussed the story of a drunkard looking for their lost key under a street lamp and not near the drawer where they dropped it. So we are so intoxicated by avidya that we are looking for happiness, purpose, meaning in the wrong place. So we have to redirect our mind on Bhagwan because Bhagwan is the only object which is not changing. So that is what Sri Krishna is recommending in the Gita, that Arjun, fix your mind on me, not on objects of this world. So there, it's very important. This verse 15. These are very deep philosophical verses. This is Sri Krishna's kindness that he's sharing this with us. Yeah. Just deliberating on even one of these verses is sufficient to give you full spiritual perfection. Mm. So, sama, sukha, dukham, dhiram. This is the philosophy of the Gita. If you have to explain to someone, tell me what is the philosophy of Gita in a nutshell? Sama, sukha, dukham, dhira. What is it recommending? Samata. It's recommending equilibrium. In contrast to this, the path of inaction, the path of Patanjali, see, both are trying to address the same problem. The avidya, and the result of avidya is the duality of the mind. And duality of the mind creates all the distress in this world. From avidya comes asmita. I am this body mind. That sense of minus. When you start to feel emotionally invested in anything related to body and mind, that's asmita. Then raga and dvesh. So now that I am this body and mind, the goal of life is to give pleasure to this body and mind. So I'll chase objects which I'm attached to, and I'll avoid objects which I'm fearful of giving my mind and body happiness or distress. Avidya, asmita, raga, dvesha, and finally, abhinivesha. Abhinivesha is such a beautiful word. It's fear of change. That I invested in something, but now it's destroyed. What's that? That's shoka. That's lamentation. That's the state of Arjun. And to have something, and what if you think that, oh, it can be taken away from me? You become a millionaire and then you have fear of being, something being stolen from you. So either lamentation or fear, we are always in these states. So the root cause of all of this is avidya. And to get out of all of this, you have to purify the mind. So Patanjali says, yoga, chitta, vritti, nirodha. How do you manage the mind? Nirodha. Chitta means mind, vritti means the functions of the mind. So cease the functions of the mind, become still externally, sit in a still posture, still your mind, and just stop everything. So that is the path of stopping actions. Stop acting. That is what Patanjali is saying. And the Patanjali Yoga, the Ashtanga Yoga, is for the yogis who can disengage from society and go to the forest. Is it practical for most of us to do that? No, it's not practical. It's also very difficult to sustain. So Sri Krishna doesn't say don't act. In fact, the entire Gita is to get Arjun to act. But how to act? Samatvam. In the next few verses, we will see Sri Krishna is going to say Samatvam Yoga Uchyate. So Patanjali defines yoga as Nirodha, Sri Krishna defines yoga as samatvam, equanimity. Becomes so equipoised that sukha and dukkha, pleasure or pain, praise or criticism, nothing disturbs you. So you become siddha, you become stable. You're going to come to the understanding of sthita pragya towards the end of chapter 2. So basically, go above this. Do you understand the beauty of Sri Krishna's presentation? You have to continue living and acting in this world, but don't get entangled, don't get attached. Like live like a lotus leaf. When you put a drop of water on the leaf of a lotus, it doesn't stay. So Sri Krishna's recommendation is to act in equilibrium. Why equilibrium? So that you can do your duty. Every verse that Sri Krishna is saying here is meant to get Arjun to perform his duty of fighting. It's not just abstract philosophy. When you will be situated above Sukha and Dukkha, when you will be in that state of samatha based on the jnana, only in that state of samatha will you be able to do your swadharma. That is why Sri Krishna is telling equanimity. It's not just to, sit with closed eyes. With an mind in equilibrium, you are supposed to go and act in the world. Yeah, for Arjun, it is fighting. For us, it is our profession, our responsibilities in family, society, etc. But we approach it from a platform of samatha. So, what happens to somebody who's reached that stage of samatha? Yeah, they become siddha. Yeah. So, you, by study of Bhagavad Gita, you will become siddha one day. Now, imagine you have achieved that state today, and it's 40 degrees outside. How will you interact with that situation? Yeah, who would like to share? You're a siddha, above sukha and dukkha, above matra sparsha, but it's 40 degrees Celsius. How will you be feeling, or what will be your state? You can guess.
Okay, I think that, you know, there has been a time when one has faced uncomfortable situations and one has
Uh-huh.
been very reactive. One has gone
Right.
into oh, how is this happening? One is going to blame, oh, the climate change, everybody, all these billionaires are ruining our planet, so much greed. So there is all of these tendencies and also a feeling of avoiding the discomfort. Let me, quickly go somewhere where there's an AC and things like that. And it has completely distracted from why I'm here. What is the reason for I'm here to do something. If I just run away from the pain, then I've missed the
Correct.
opportunity for delivering whatever service I was there to deliver. I think as
Right.
I'm not in any perfection right now, but at least by the study of these beautiful things, recently what started coming is asking this inquiry, okay, first of all, my body feels the
Mm.
pain. Yes. But I can manage my body. My body is not me. I can manage my body. And
Mm.
let me take a look at what I'm here to do and see what's the best that can be arrived. So I'm at that state right now, and I'm hoping to become Sthit Pragya by the end of my journey. I'm not there yet, but at least I've been able to now become more self-aware and ask the right questions and not
Great.
just avoid the pain.
Great. That's a very good way to respond. You're more self-aware and not avoiding the negative experience. Yeah, thank you for sharing. Yes, Prabhu?
Hare Krishna Guru. If I want to go outside, if it is temperature is about 40, so first I should find my purpose, why I'm going. So if my purpose is higher than these dualities of this nature, so I will tolerate Stitikshasva. So as you said earlier, so purpose should be about the dualities of this material nature. So if your purpose is right, then I will definitely go and bear that temperature. So if the purpose is
Great.
higher, you don't care about dualities.
Okay, great. Yeah, that's correct. Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Anyone would like to add any other thoughts or opinions? hmm So when you're above Sukha and Dukkha, you're acting from a platform of equanimity. Will you stop experiencing the heat and cold? The experience will not change, but you will now not be disturbed by it. That is what you see in all the saints. They are still in this world. They might even have disease of the body or mind or circumstance. So, we think like this, oh, they were such nice people. They were like spiritual all their lives. Why are they suffering? They are not suffering. They are above all of that. They are still in this body. Therefore, they are experiencing, but they are not being touched by that experience. They are not disturbed by it. And only when we are not disturbed can we be above dualities and then perform our duty. So that is what I was trying to share that. Shri Krishna is saying use your intelligence above your mind. That's going to come later in chapters 3 and 5. Buddhi. Okay, so everything that we come in touch with hmm, will lead to a certain. See, I mean, nobody is an addict from day one. Everyone ends up becoming an addict. How did it start? It started from the first indulgence, the first experience. First time a person uses a substance, what happens? Or, it's not just about substance, anything that we do. The first time that you do it, it creates a vritti. It creates an inclination. Vritti is a topic for later deliberation in chapter 16. Yeah, 17. That's when we will actually discuss vrittis. But just understand it creates a inclination. Yeah. And see, you cannot avoid sense contact. You are living in this world, you will come in touch with objects and environmental triggers. That will create a vritti in you. Now, the bigger question is, if to this vritti, so whenever we do something, there are two things which happen. One is reaction comes for that action. That's karma and karma phala. More subtle than that is a vritti also develops. You develop an inclination. Yeah, therefore it said, first time to do something wrong takes a lot of effort because your conscience is at its full. But to do the same wrong, when you have become conditioned, then you become a serial killer. It doesn't even emotionally disturb you to kill someone. Why? Because your vritti has now hardened. So how does vritti harden? Only when you add your attachment to it, raga dvesh. So we cannot stop ourselves from gaining impressions in this world. We can avoid, but sometimes, we have to live. So impressions will come, contact will happen. Because of that, certain inclinations will also come. But do we engage in that with raga or dvesh, or we engage without raga or dvesh? That will decide, will it leave lasting impressions, swabhava, or will it not leave swabhava? This is very important. You remember we discussed about swabhava last time? So swabhava is created when you invest your raga and dvesh in the vrittis, in the inclination that occur because of any action. So that is the power of controlling your raga and dvesh, that you stop unfavorable swabhava from being generated in you. It's like an antivirus. You don't allow virus files to enter your system. Okay, is this point clear? Because it's very important. Yeah, everything we do and action will lead to karma phal. That's a separate discussion. That's in fact easier because karma phal will get exhausted. once you experience it. The more problematic thing is the vritti that it creates. Yeah, if you smoke for the first time, there will be a reaction to it, but it will also create an inclination to smoke a second time. So the vritti is more problematic. We and when in that vritti we attach our raga and dvesh, then that solidifies into swabhava, and that will determine your or that will influence your future choices. So therefore, we have to be very careful. Yes, Prabhu.
Prabhu, what do you mean when you say you invest your raga and dvesha?
Yeah. So attachment and aversion, like and dislike. I might go through an experience, I might pass through an environment of temptations, but I don't start feeling for them. Yeah, I don't say, wow, this is amazing. This would be amazing to experience. So triggering your raga and dvesha. Basically, when your state of mind is not stable, then you get entangled in those vrittis. So when we have understood that, oh, sukha and dukkha comes from the state of mind, so I have to cure it at the raga and dvesh level. Why am I having attachment to few things and aversion to others? It's all a state of mind. Let me rise above it. Sama sukha dukkha. That is how we go above raga and dvesha. So feeling for it, thinking, feeling, and willing. Thinking we cannot avoid because we are exposed to triggers and impressions. Even the greatest rishis and saints cannot. If they are seeing something, they'll think about it. But what they do is they don't let it progress to the next stage of feeling. No raga and dvesh. The thought comes and goes. For us, the thought comes, we feel around it, and that feeling develops into a desire to do it, willing. That is what implicates us.
Prabhu,
Okay.
without intervention, I've noticed that older people, they naturally have developed this patience and this sense of equanimity without even being on spiritual paths. But in our younger
Right.
ages, whether if we don't do interventions and try to, get our instruction, it's very difficult. So, what is it about age that naturally makes people equipoised?
Yeah. Correct. Remember we said we were discussing these verses not on the basis of Shabda Praman. We are not saying because Vedas say therefore you have to accept and believe a soul. We are understanding this based on empiricism, based on Tarka. So these are truths of life. Once you have seen enough patterns, once you have seen enough cause effect. When you're young, you only can see your choices. You cannot see their consequences. But as you age, you have been through a few cycles of choices and their consequences. Then you make patterns and then you realize, oh, let's hold before I make the next choice because let's see what the consequences of that will be. That's the only difference. So Sri Krishna in the next verse 16 beautifully explains that there are two states, Sat and Asat. Sat means that which is eternal. Sat means everything in the spiritual energy. Jiva, Ishvara, the Dham of the Lord, the Leela of the Lord. All of that is Sat. Asat is what is in the purview of material energy, Bahiranga Shakti. So there is this very interesting, and we need to understand this before we move on to verse 19. You can define Sat and Asat in two ways. One way to look at Sat is something that exists, and Asat as something that does not exist. Okay, so little philosophical. Please bear for 2 minutes. So, Sat means that which exists, जिसका भाव, जिसका existence है. Asat means जिसका existence ही नहीं है. Yeah, does it sound a true definition? Acharya say yes, it might be reasonable, but think of something that never existed. Can you even understand or describe something that never existed? It's pointless. So our acharyas take a different meaning of the word sat and asat. They say sat means that which undergoes change, that which is in that which doesn't undergo change, I'm sorry, that is sat, which is immutable. And asat is that which undergoes change, which is mutable. This is a better way to look at sat and asat. So we are saying transformation. Yeah, sat. I mean, in our experience, everything is changing because we have not reached that level of self-realization. So therefore, it's at a concept level, we can think Atma is Sat, and the body and mind and everything connected to it is Asat. Yeah, that is one way to see it. So, uh, I was saying transformation. So our acharyas, Vaishnava acharyas say we should understand Sat as Asat as transformation, not non-existence. Because two very different theories will come out of these two definitions. Okay. The soul is Sat, it undergoes no transformation. The body is Asat, it undergoes transformation. And this section which we are studying is called Sankhya, Sankhya Yoga. We have not yet come to karma, or we have not even come to bhakti. These verses are just presenting Sankhya. Sankhya means differentiating. How is this different from that? Sankhya, coming from the word counting or enumerating and differentiating. That's Sankhya. So here, Sat and Asat, Sankhya says the difference is that of Purusha and Prakriti. Purusha is that which never changes, and Purusha includes both the Jiva and the Ishwar. Prakriti is that which is constantly changing. So Arjun, why are you considering that the opponents will die? Bodies are going to die. Body is Prakriti. It is always Asat. One who has understood the true nature of Sat and Asat, Purusha and Prakriti, they are called Tattvadarshibhi. The Tattvadarshibhi have concluded this difference between the two. Okay, so Arjun, you are lamenting for change of Prakriti, which is a law. Take heart from the fact that soul is never changing and rise up with this true understanding of Purusha and Prakriti, then you perform your duty. Don't give up your duty for something which is a law of nature. Yeah. If you say next morning, if I wake up and if gravity still exists, I'll not go to office. What are you saying? Prakriti will always change, bodies will always die. Arjun, you're saying something that's a natural phenomena. If it occurs, you will give up your duty. You see how foolish is that? And Shri Krishna is going to say that in stronger words. Apariharya arthe. We'll see that when it comes. So, understand the true nature of things. That is a dhira. That is a tattvadarshini. So, we all have to become dhira, operating at the level of buddhi, seeing the true nature of sat and asat, not mistaking one for another. That's when problems happen. You give the qualities of asat to sat and the qualities of sat to asat. So that's when you undergo this confusion. And when you expect things which are temporary to stay permanent, or which things which are permanent, you treat them as temporary, therefore as of no value. That is what causes all the problem. So what is asat? Once again, not non-existence, but transformation. Just note this, we'll elaborate upon it later. So what is asat? Is the soul asat? No, soul is sat. Is the body asat? In one sense, body is also there, right? I can see my body, I can touch it. So it's not unreal. Yeah, it's not ultimately real because it goes through stages of manifestation and unmanifestation. Now I have this body. After a while, I'll not have this body. So what is happening? It is going through stages of transformations, vyakta, avyakta. It is temporary, therefore we call it asat. Okay. And we discussed this last time. What is actually asat? Neither the soul nor the body, both are factual. The imagined relationship between them is asat. Because of avidya, we are thinking that there is a relationship between the body and soul, whereas factually there is no relationship. Okay. Then in the next verse, 17, the Lord says, Avinashi tu tadvidhi. So we discussed the soul is present in the heart region and its symptom, consciousness, is spread throughout the body. And Prabhupada beautifully philosophically builds it up. You can experience the pains and pleasures in your body, but you cannot experience the pain or pleasure in someone else's body. That means the consciousness of your soul is spread only up to the limit of your body. Someone else has another soul. So no one is able to destroy that imperishable soul. Another attribute of the soul introduced in verse 17 is avinashi. Again, let us understand the word nasha. It is not that it will vanish, it will transform. Just like we study, energy can neither be created nor destroyed, it can only be transformed from one state to another. So let us look at Vinash also in that way. That it's going to be transformed, it's not going to retain its current form. It's not ultimate, it's not eternal. Because in that sense, the body, what will happen to the body when we die? The Pancha Mahabhut, the five elements, earth, water, fire, air, ether, will go back to their respective elements. That's what the devotee also prays in the Upanishad, Ishopanishad. Let the fire of my body enter the fire element. So, body being Vinashi doesn't mean the elements will get destroyed. It will not retain its current form, it will be transformed. So, again, we are seeing the meaning of Vinasha, Asat, as transformation, not that it will not exist at all. That doesn't happen because everything is an energy of the divine. So the soul pervades, soul is
Till
in our body.
till this till that one transformation stage to other transformation stage,
Yeah.
there is still a relationship between the sat and the body, right? I mean, within that transformation, I'm telling. Maybe overall, it's not. There's no relation, but within that transformation, isn't there a
Good,
relation?
very good question. Very good question. But still, it is not the relationship between body and soul. You remember we brought up this idea that for a change to happen, change from state A to state B has to happen based on some substratum. There has to be a foundation on which change is happening. So when transformation is happening, what you are saying, the relationship exists between the new state and the prior state. It is not with the body and the soul. The soul is just a substratum. Does it make sense? So when you change your body from youth to old age, the relationship is with the old body and the young body because you are the constant witness. So that change doesn't demonstrate a relationship between body and soul. It demonstrates relationship between different situations of witnessing.
Okay.
Yeah. Does it make sense?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. But yeah, good. That was a very good clarification. So we were discussing that this body, the soul pervades, consciousness pervades throughout our body. So where is the soul located? That's the next principle. How big is the soul? So here, Prabhupada explains in the purport from Shvetashvatara Upanishad that the soul is Anu. Yeah, it's a tip of our hair. If we again cut it into 100, that one out of 100 of the tip of the hair, that may indicate the size of the soul. Basically, it's atomic. Because scriptures, again, Nyaya especially, Nyaya says that something which is either atomic or something which is infinite, only these two states can be Sat. Okay, I'm complicating it, I know, but this is just for extra information. What can be Sat? Something that is infinite, like Ishvara, or something that's Anu, like Atma. But if you say that the Atma is as the same size as the body, there are some philosophies which say that. But then how do you explain local anesthesia? If somebody is giving you have a surgery in your arm and they give local anesthesia, only that part loses consciousness. So if it is the same soul, one soul as much as the size of the body, then how is local anesthesia happening? But if we say no, soul is minute, atomic in the heart region, and its consciousness spreads throughout the body, and then we can understand that a part of that consciousness can be dull. So this is also a philosophical point. So two philosophies diverge from this. So the Advaitins, they say that Sat and Asat. So if the soul is Sat, that means doesn't change, it doesn't have a birth and therefore doesn't have a death. So that philosophy they expand into saying that it is only one soul Brahman. Whereas we say no, it is not. That soul doesn't exist. We are saying that soul undergoes transformation. We are all individual souls, which doesn't undergo transformation. So we are all individual souls. So just I'm pointing out that based on how you define Sat and Asat, two different philosophies will result. If you define it as non-existence, then the Advaita philosophy will be the result. If you define it as transformation, then our Vaishnava philosophy will result. Then we saw in verse 18 the Lord saying further attributes of the soul. It's indestructible. Antavant, iska anti nahi hai. It's imperishable. It's immeasurable. Aprameyasya. It is eternal. Nitya. Therefore, Arjun, fight. So basically, Lord is motivating Arjun based on spiritual knowledge. So we saw here very beautiful point in the purport, which we can highlight. The living entity as he is cannot be killed, nor can the material body be saved for any length of time or permanently protected. So, what is the Deha? The minute particle of the whole spirit acquires this material body according to his work. What does this mean? The minute particle of the whole spirit. What is that? Atma acquires this material body, Deha, according to his work, karma. So karma decides Deha. Please note down. Karma dictates Deha. And therefore, observance of religious principles should be utilized. Therefore, you should do dharma. Otherwise, if there was no law of karma, why should I do good? You get your next body based on how you act today. Therefore, that is the impetus or premise for following dharma at all times. Because if you add according to dharma, you will do good karma, that will give you a favorable deha. Okay, and this deha is given to the Atma. It is not the Atma, it is given to the Atma. In one sentence, Prabhupada is, capturing the whole philosophy. That is his brilliance. So the soul is like light. Just as sunlight maintains the entire universe, the light of the soul maintains this material body. Yeah, so we can think of the soul as sun, which is spreading its sunlight of consciousness throughout our whole body. That is how our body acts. Just as in the universe, the sun activates and energizes the universe. The body itself is unimportant. Arjun was advised to fight and not sacrifice the cause of religion for material bodily consciousness. So you understand Sri Krishna's final argument that dharma is above deha. Arjun, आप देह के ऊपर अपना धर्म छोड़ रहे हैं. But in reality, dharma comes above deha because dharma के under karma produces deha. So dharma can create any number of dehas. So dharma is, as they say, foundational, and deha is a resultant. So you are making decisions based on effect. Actually, you should make your decision based on the cause. Okay. Is it clear? It's a very convincing argument. So, yeah, there was a question. If we say soul cannot be measured, yeah, it's just to indicate the soul actually cannot be measured. But to give from our material conception, if we have to give some indication, just like we cannot conceive of the Lord, but what to do? In our current capacity, some reference should be given so we can get an idea. So it's not the reality, it's just an indication. So we say Krishna has lotus eyes. So, we really can't conceive of Krishna's eyes, transcendental eyes. But in our experience, lotus is the most beautiful object. Therefore, we correlate it with Krishna's eyes. So it gives some idea that, oh, I now get an idea of how beautiful Krishna's eyes would be. Similarly, we are saying it is 1/10,000th of a tip of a hair to give an idea, but it's actually atomic. Not just, okay, very good question. Not just that it is atomic, it is also not matter. It is a different category, it is subtle. How can you measure anything that's subtle? So there are two categories, Jiva and Prakriti. So it is not of the category of Prakriti that you can measure. It is aprameyasya because it is of a different category of being spirit. Can you measure spirit? No. But it is still atomic because we can see how it functions and works. Okay, is that okay? Okay, so let's continue. It's important to have clarity before we just keep moving on.
Prabhu,
And Sri
for that
Krishna is.
same question, I had the same question that she had in the last class. That
Yeah.
when first of all, it's subtle, so it cannot be measured and it's not material. So to give it some concept of space or size or
Correct.
scale is also futile. And
Correct.
I understand the atomic aspect of it. When I go to meditation, there's more expansiveness. So it's so I understand that like the cell or the battery of a mobile phone is very small, but it can power
Yeah.
a huge computer also. So that aspect I
Correct.
understand between a soul and a body. But when we expand in our meditation and try to connect with this thing, there's so much expansion that happens.
Correct.
So the thing of trying to contract it into a tiny little thing, that's again a little contrary, but it's my personal limitation. I'm not suggesting there's anything wrong
That's
with it.
true.
So that's my personal
Yeah.
limitation.
No, what you're saying is true, but what is that expansion you're feeling? That expansion is coming from your connection with the infinite. When you actually connect yourself as a part of the infinite, you feel wow. In fact, we share the same nature as Bhagavan, Satchidanand. So imagine realizing that you are Satchidanand, a part of Krishna, Mama Eva Amsha. So that is the expansion that you feel. It's not your independent infiniteness. It is when you connect to Krishna that you feel his infiniteness. That's the expansion we feel. So people don't realize, people think Das means, you. That's a low position, but it's the highest position. You experience your fullest, truest, highest nature. Yeah, is that okay? Yeah. Yeah, soul in the shape of a form of a seed. Um, I don't know if there is a scriptural reference to it, but yeah, I mean, we can think of why they would say that. It's the seed of consciousness. From there, consciousness pervades the entire body. That's how we can see it. Okay, so let's look at these verses. You see, Sri Krishna is hammering the same point. He's just presenting it in different principles, but he's saying the same thing, the difference between the body and soul. Why do you think so much repetition is required? Is Krishna being redundant? Is Krishna being repetitive? No. The problem is that the bodily conception of life is so deeply entrenched in our chitta that it will take a lot of beating to loosen that grip. We'll not be convinced. As much as Sri Krishna says strong philosophical points, we'll still come back and say, what is comfortable, what is pleasurable, let's look for it. So it has to be hammered. Therefore, the repetition. Repetition indicates emphasis, and also that the conditioning is so strong that it requires constant meditation. That is why 30 verses just on Tattva Gyan, just on the Atma Gyan. Arjuna is like, we are on a battlefield. We are not in a monastery. Why you are talking of the Atma? And we'll see in the next chapter how from identity duty springs up. Without identity, you can never make sense of duty. Okay. Yes, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Prabhuji, we can understand this by as far as size is concerned and how the energies that has been the consciousness that has been spread out throughout the body. So if we can understand this with a scientific example, the best example would be a nuclear reaction. There are minute particles of atom or atoms that are being split,
Correct.
and it creates a lot of energy.
Absolutely.
So that would be a
Yeah.
more relevant example, I believe.
Correct. Yeah. So, we cannot just limit the power of the soul because of its minute size. It's atomic, but it's powerful as well. Yeah. Good
Another
point. Thank you.
aspect of a small size, now that you're speaking, is that it's unburdened by all the other baggage. So maybe the other aspects of what we see as so big have so much baggage, and maybe because it's so pure, it doesn't need to
It
carry
relieves you
so much
from the
space.
burden. Exactly. It relieves you from the burden of playing God in this world. You don't have to carry everyone's burdens. That is God's problem. You elevate yourself, and then you'll be in a better position to help others. So let's look at verse 19. य एनं वेति हन्तारं यश्चैनं मन्यते हतम् उभौ तौ न विजानीतो नायं हन्ति न हन्यते. So this is like conclusion. So Shri Krishna establishes the principle, and what are the corollaries? So what do we understand from this? Neither he who thinks the living entity the slayer, nor he who thinks it slain is in knowledge. Again, knowledge. I'm just highlighting vijanito, jnana. So neither he who thinks the living entity the slayer, nor he who thinks it slain is in knowledge. For the self slays not nor is slain. This is a little poetic British English way of putting it. So basically, the thing is that the self neither kills nor is killed. Those who think that the soul kills, that Arjun, you are the killer, or Bhishma is killed, they have failed to understand Sat and Asat. They are Modha. Okay, so what is happening at the bodily level? People are performing actions, and in the war, warriors might get injured and their bodies might get destroyed. But at the eternal, level of the eternal self, the consciousness is not being cut or terminated. Hanta, hanyate. So Sri Krishna is distinguishing ultimate identity from the actions of the body. And the body is killing and the body is being killed, but you and your ultimate identity of the self have nothing to do with killing or being killed. But very quickly, Srila Prabhupada points out that doesn't mean that this principle is removing moral responsibility. Oh, the soul is not killed, so let me kill someone and then not take responsibility. The Vedas also recommend us one should not commit violence. Ma himsayat sarvabhutani. So, what did we see? How do different living entities get their body? Because of their karma. So, karma, the law is deciding their deha and the duration of their deha. Who are you to interfere with the law who has given them that deha? You cannot harm or kill that deha which was not your creation. So, one should never commit violence to anyone. So, the caution is this understanding that the living entity is not killed should not encourage unnecessary violence or even animal slaughter. Oh, we are just killing the bodies of the animals. We are not killing the soul in the animal. Have you heard this? And there have been court cases where some people with mental disorders they murdered someone and then they come to the court and say when they're asked why did you kill them? So I didn't kill them. Who could I kill? So when you speak philosophy in the wrong place, that is inappropriate. You cannot misuse, don't abuse philosophy. The theory of karma is presented in a particular framework. Use it in that complete framework. Therefore, it is said to study philosophy requires qualification. It is not discrimination. It is just ensuring that it doesn't fall in wrong hands. And then those people will abuse it, and then the whole tradition will get a bad name. Like animal slaughter, killing animals in yagya. The so-called Brahmanas were doing it indiscriminately. Therefore, now the whole Hindu society is facing this charge that we sacrifice animals. So that is when you take something out of context and abuse a principle. Yes, Prabhu.
The concept of mercy killing is also bogus, right?
It's a very, very good point which you bring up. I would say it's subjective. We really don't know what the circumstance of the person is. Yeah, we cannot judge with incomplete information. We are so quick to judge. Now that you brought up this point, this leads to the paper I was talking about, fatalism and karma. You know, the sense of justice that we feel when somebody, for example, commits a murder. And how do we feel? What do you feel when you see somebody who has committed a murder? Or what do we feel as a society? Yeah, what are some of your feelings and thoughts? Please share.
The most common one is judgment, hatred,
Okay.
criticism, blame,
Yeah.
shock, disbelief. How can someone be so blind?
Yeah.
There was this movie
Okay.
that I saw, Susan Sarandon, I don't know, something called Dead Man Walking, where there's a Catholic nun who's chosen a spiritual life and a very renunciate life, and she gets the time to spend with the final days of a person who's on death row because for a
Mm-hmm.
brutal murder. And when she's in conversation with him, she learns to humanize his pain as well. for what it could be. So yes, there's too many layers to it, but I thought I'll just say.
Exactly. Yeah. Good. What else anyone would like to add? How you feel when you encounter a murderer?
Mostly situations. In what situation someone has
Yeah.
committed such a sin,
Yeah.
or
Would
maybe
you
the
want them?
mental state what he must be going through, or why that compulsion had been impelled on him that he took such a step.
Okay, but this comes later. Don't you feel like they should be punished?
Yeah,
Hang them.
first,
They
Especially
deserve
if
it.
especially if we have some relationship with the one who has been murdered, right? So we
No, I'm
immediately
not talking of that. There is no relationship. It's just a news. A murderer.
yes.
You want justice to be delivered, right? So neuroscience says that this feeling of justice, revenge, let's use the right word, revenge, it in fact triggers the same area of our brain which is same as the dopamine hit that you get on any addiction like cocaine. That is the same region it activates. So our instinct wants them to be punished. So it stops us from humanizing them. So in justice, it is very complicated. It's called jurisprudence. Do you want to punish them or do you want to reform them? A politician will stir up emotion, will say, yeah, they deserve to be killed. They are a, danger to entire society. But a philosopher will say, you have not understood. The more you understand, the less you judge. But politician will say, I don't want to understand. I want them to be punished. That's all I want. So I'm trying to say justice and revenge के ऊपर understanding है. Understanding means you humanize them and then you try to reform them. So that these are different approaches. I'm not saying one is right, another is wrong. These are all questions which are subjective. So mercy killing is also in this category. We do not know the situation, so we cannot judge based on all the information we have. It could be very specific.
Prabhu, there's this
So
verse in the Nectar of Instruction which says that, you should, once a person has adopted the path of bhakti or devotion, should not judge them by what they did before that. And
yeah.
in scripture also, there's this case of Valmiki, and even in Buddhism, the story of Angulimal, when they came into contact with very pious souls and teachers,
Mhm.
they received a very strong transformation.
Oh yes.
So that's something I just felt like I should.
Sure. Oh, we are coming to that. We'll build it up. That all of this happens by our swabhava. How can swabhava be purified? And yes, the conclusion is through satsang, through sadhana. So you can completely change your swabhava. That is the whole idea of spiritual life. So yeah, this is how, I would like to address that. Yeah, it has layers and it's not very easy to just give a judgment. I would not like to give a judgment on it. So here in this verse, we are saying that mahimsayat. Nobody is killer or being killed. Yeah. But we still do not have the right to interfere in anyone's karmic design. They have got a certain deha for a certain duration. We have no right to interfere. Mm, yeah. So Arjun, fear is coming from the fact that he is going to be the killer and he is going to incur sin. Shri Krishna is saying, who is killing whom? So Shri Krishna is taking it at a metaphysical level and Arjuna is seeing it at a conventional level. But it's very important to teach a student that the level you are looking at is not ultimate. There are higher levels of reality. So, therefore, mercy killing, end of life care, how do you handle bereavement when you lose a loved one or there has been some abuse? So when we go through all of these situations, we are trying to tackle these circumstances. The distinction that we are talking about in verse 19 can still preserve some reverence for life. Yeah. So death doesn't mean total extinction. So we have to enter difficult situations with the idea that let's give life dignity and let's not take death as ultimate extinction as the end of everything. Okay. Anyone? Oh, there's some question in the text which I didn't understand. Yeah. What would lead someone to do this? To do what? To kill in the name of.
I think she was just answering your question as to what would your reactions be if you discovered something.
Okay, sure. Okay, so let's move to verse 20. Very beautiful, very popular verse. So here Shri Krishna concludes one section, and this is also a verse for you to memorize. न जायते म्रियते वा कदाचिन् नायं भूत्वा भविता वा न भूयः अजो नित्य शाश्वतोऽयं पुराणो न हन्यते हन्यमाने शरीरे. For the soul, there is neither birth nor death at any time. He has not come into being, does not come into being, and will not come into being. He is eternal, ever existing, and primeval. He is not slain when the body is slain. So Sri Krishna is, giving it a depth that the self is unborn, indestructible. Let's also look at the Sanskrit words. Aja means kabhi birth hi nahi tha. Only something that's born will die, right? If something is never born, it can never die. Aja, that makes it. So if something has no birth and death, no start, is called Anadi or Aja. No end is called Ananta. And one who has both Anadi and Ananta, no start and no end, is called Nitya. So, Aja, no birth, therefore no death, therefore Nitya, eternal. Nitya is eternal. Shashwata means it is always there. It's Sat, it's Shashwat, it's permanent. It's also Purana. So, Prabhupada here very beautifully writes, under the impression of the body, we seek the history of birth, etc. of the soul. What we are trying to do is, you remember we discussed two categories of body and soul. We are currently in the bodily concept of life, and from that concept, we are trying to understand a spiritual topic. So we are imposing the methods and measures of matter to understand the soul. Also, tell me, when did the soul come into being? The most popular question. We cannot use these ideas of birth and history of the soul. The soul is Purana. It is always there. It is ancient. It was always there. Okay. Na hanyate, hanyamane, sharire. So the soul does not undergo changes. The body undergoes changes. Soul is steady, kutastha. And that's the reason of Sri Krishna explaining this whole philosophy to Arjun. Arjun, in a world where everything is changing, unless you anchor yourself in your identity, which is never changing, you will never be able to overcome fear and lamentation. How to operate in a world which is ever changing? It will lead to fear and lamentation unless you anchor yourself on the stable identity of the soul, which is never changing. Okay, and Prabhupada talks of the 6 changes. Even when somebody grows old, in spirit, they are still young. We see them as being old, but you ask them, they feel they're still young. So it is the soul doesn't deteriorate like anything material, like a tree or any material objects. And Srila Prabhupada also points out that there is a similar verse in Katha Upanishad. Exact verse, just the word Kadachin is replaced by Vipaschin. Na jayate mriyate va Vipaschin. Vipaschin means again, Dhira, a learned person, Pandita, Samatvam. So only one who is Dhira based on knowledge can be a steady Samatvam. So the spirit soul in its true nature is full of jnana and anandamaya. It's just pure knowledge and bliss. That's the nature of the soul. So we can understand the presence of the soul by its symptoms. Sometimes if there are clouds, you'll not be able to spot the sun, but because there are sun rays, you can conclude that, oh yeah, there has to be sun. So the sun is like the soul, and its presence, its symptoms should convince us of its existence. Since there is some consciousness in all bodies, whether man or animal, we can understand the presence of the soul. But that individual consciousness is different from supreme consciousness. Okay? And when we forget our real nature of Atman, we enter into a conditioned state. And from that conditioned state, we need to receive this education and enlightenment from Sri Krishna or a guru. But so that means there are two types of souls, because we saw that we are also consciousness and ultimately Ishwar is also consciousness. But one consciousness is subject to forgetfulness. That's how we have become conditioned. And super consciousness or Paramatma is not subject to forgetfulness at any time. It is avyaya, it's infallible, it's immutable. So the superconscious Paramatma will always be omniscient, whereas we, the individual Atma, have the vulnerability of being covered over by avidya. Prabhupada gives the example of fire and sparks of fire. Fire is huge. You cannot, just control fire. But sparks of fire are very small. That can extinguish when they come in touch with mud or earth. So we are individual consciousness and Ishwar is supreme consciousness. We are vulnerable. We forget our original nature and we become conditioned. Ishwar can never become conditioned. That's why we say Brahman can never come in avidya bhava. So the Advaita theory that Brahman, under the influence of Maya, is the Jiva. You remove Maya by Vidya, and then you realize the Jiva is only Brahman. We say no. How did we discuss this? That the nature of that soul doesn't allow that divisibility. It also doesn't allow ignorance. By nature, Brahman is supposed to be omniscient. It can never be conditioned or ignorant. Yeah, it's a very strong argument. So we are Anu Atma, atomic consciousness. Krishna is Vibhu Atma, infinite consciousness or supreme consciousness. And then Srila Prabhupada gives another verse from Kathopanishad which talks about this. Anor Aniyan Mahato Mahiyan. So both, there are two conscious, there are two categories of consciousness, minute and infinite. One is Atma, one is Paramatma. So Arjun is that atomic soul, that atomic consciousness who has forgotten his real nature. Therefore, he needs enlightenment by Sri Krishna. If you say Krishna is also a product of Maya, then how can Krishna teach? For a teacher, they have to be above avidya. So then Bhagavad Gita doesn't hold, Sri Krishna's authority doesn't hold. So therefore, that explanation is not valid. Okay, so here we are seeing that when we have right knowledge, we are able to perform our responsibility. Na jayate mriyate va kadachit. So we should become enlightened and then distinguish what is dharma and adharma. And even if dharma is uncomfortable, not giving me pleasure, still I should do it because now I'm acting from a place of enlightenment. Yeah, not imagining that preserving the body is the highest good. So you remember Arjun debating at the levels of Artha Shastra, Dharma Shastra, Rajaniti. Sri Krishna says those are all lower levels. Preserving the body, all your arguments are coming from the premise of preserving the body. But once you get enlightened, you realize the nature of Sat and Asat. And only in that enlightenment can you distinguish dharma and adharma and follow through to execute dharma. Okay. Next verse. This is 21. Veda vinashinam nityam yena enam ajam avyayam ya enam ajam avyayam katham sa purusha partha kam ghatyanti hantikam. O Partha, how can a person who knows that the soul is indestructible, eternal, unborn, and immutable kill anyone or cause anyone to kill? Extension of the same argument. So here very beautifully Srila Prabhupada talks about violence. Is Gita promoting violence? Is Sri Krishna encouraging violence in Bhagavad Gita? Those who have not read the entirety of the Gita and they take it out of context, or if it's not in their, they have a different cultural upbringing, they make these claims. But this doesn't hold. What does Bhagavad Gita say? It's not advocating violence, it's advocating duty. And for Arjun, the duty happens to be fighting. If Bhagavad Gita was spoken to a Brahmana, it would not tell, it will not encourage or instruct violence, as simple as that. So, is violence good or bad? Violence in itself is not good or bad. Everything depends on its utility. So, we are neither recommending violence nor are we recommending non violence. We are recommending. So, the two extremes are violence or silence. But we are recommending appropriate, authorized violence when it serves justice. Just like, there is punishment in the code. Is that violence? Yes, but it is authorized. It's necessary. So violence has its utility. How to apply violence rests with the person in knowledge. So the first criteria is enlightenment. Are you speaking about violence from passion and ignorance or from a place of enlightenment? Even the terrorist recommends violence, but a terrorist is recommending or propagating it from a place of ignorance and hate and duality. Sri Krishna is recommending violence from a stage of pure enlightenment, beyond duality. Yeah, he is using Arjuna as an instrument to establish dharma in society. Although justice of peace awards capital punishment to a person condemned for murder, the justice of the peace cannot be blamed. So you cannot blame the judge. Why are you giving someone punishment? The purpose of the whole judicial system is to maintain social order. That is dharma. So if it is required for peace and prosperity and order in society, that adharmic elements who are operating based on hate, envy, lust, like Duryodhan, if they have to be eliminated, that's just administration of justice. That's not violence. Yeah. Because why should we not blame the judge? Because the judge is acting according to the codes of justice. They are acting according to the constitution, dharma. So if somebody's implementing dharma, you cannot blame them. They are acting according to the codes of the law. Manu Samhita is a law book for mankind. So murder, why is there capital punishment for murder? In our modern society, it is the sense of justice that drives it. We discussed it. The same reward we get. It's very difficult to forgive. But that is not the same spirit in which Dharma Shastras recommend capital punishment. See, Manu Samhita is a Dharma Shastra again. It is not a Jnana Shastra like Bhagavad Gita. So it in hierarchy it is lower. But still it is a guidebook for mankind. So we are not speaking at the level of the Bhagavad Gita, we are speaking at moral level now. Why should a murderer be given capital punishment? Because of the great sin that they have committed. The suffering is so large that if they don't experience it immediately, it will flow over into their future lives. So it is, in one sense, administration of a strong dose of their own suffering. It has to come because now it's karmic. You have committed an action, now it's too late to, stop the consequences. How do you experience those consequences? If you get immediate punishment, then you don't have to, see it prolong and interfere with your multiple future lives. So that is Manu Samhita. That is not Bhagavad Gita, just to note. So when Sri Krishna orders fighting, it is to establish dharma. Any violence committed in the act of fighting for Krishna is not violence at all. Hmm? One, because it is being done at the level of knowledge. Second, it is also be done from the right authority, like a judge or a surgeon. A surgeon also cuts the body open. There is blood, there is pain, but they are not considered criminal. In fact, they are considered to be healers. That is how we should look at violence in the Bhagavad Gita. It's necessary violence for curing a bigger cancer. That is how we understand this. Therefore, the fighting to be executed by Arjun at the instruction of Krishna is with full knowledge. So there is no possibility of sinful reaction. We'll study in further chapters then that when you act in jnana, jnana is so powerful that it can destroy the reactions to your karma. So same principle. Another was very beautiful. It gives a analogy to the philosophy that we have been discussing. So just before we move to 22, in verse 21, although we say that, the soul cannot be killed or killed, we should know knowledge comes with responsibility. Knowledge cannot reduce responsibility. So somebody who uses this philosophy to commit crime and harm is not at all enlightened. Okay. 22. Vasamsi jirnani yatha vihaya navani grinnati naroparani tatha sharirani vihaya jirnani anyani samyati navani dehi. Krishna makes it simple. Don't worry if you're not able to understand Sat and Asat. As a person puts on new garments, giving up old ones, the soul similarly accepts new material bodies, giving up old and useless ones. So it's it's no big deal. So clothing analogy is very good to make us understand transmigration. So it is serious, but it's also a way of life. You use the clothes, but you also give them up when they become torn and old. So look at body, we have also discussed this previously, as an instrument which is meant to serve you, the Atman. So the body is a useful instrument through which you experience the world, through which you can perform dharma, through which you can attain bhakti. So body is a very useful instrument, but jirnani, the body will get old. So body will get worn out. What will you do? You take on a new body, navani. So this basically suggesting continuity, that your journey is going to be continuous. Your arc is continuous as the soul. There is no change. Death is not for you, the soul. Hmm. Also, giving the analogy of clothes, it is helping us, Arjun and us, understand, overcome the sense of possessiveness. Sometimes we are in love with some of our dresses, but we cannot stop them from getting worn out. So we, the garment, are not us. We might want to have a sense of possessiveness over it, but that garment cannot permanently, decorate us. Similarly, the present body cannot provide lasting safety. You have to prepare for the change. So, as spiritualists, we have to be very aware of this, and through this understanding, then we can experience when there are changes in our health condition, in our appearance. If we make our physical capacity as our identity and our source of attention, then that is dangerous. Yeah, if you have an obsessive identification with your body, if you're deriving a lot of attention from your appearance or any bodily identity, it will create fear, comparison, and dejection when the change comes. So we have to learn to see the body as an instrument. We should be grateful, we should use it with care, but we should not start identifying with it as the self. Hmm. So Srila Prabhupada says, change of body is accepted fact. Yeah, even the scientists say that, our body is continuously changing. Our cells wear out and then there are new cells which are produced. So in a span of 7 years or so, all the cells of our body have changed. So it's a new body. Yeah, have you seen people who like to have vintage cars? 80s. And forget vintage, even if you have used a car for a long time, you start developing possessiveness about it. And then someone says, "Arey, it's got old, change it." You say, "No, no, no, I'll not change it. It has been very dear to me. You don't want to give it up." So what you do, you say, "Let's only change the part which has the defect." So you change the tire. Another few years later, you change the axle, you change the engine. After a sufficient time, it's an entire new car. All the parts have changed, but you are not ready to accept that my old car is gone. So if we feel this for the car, imagine how much would we feel for our body. That attachment, that identification is real. Yeah, it is very deep. So here, let's see here. Mm. So there are these two examples which Sri Krishna presents to explain, and it's very interesting. So one is the example of the body. The soul transitions through different changes of the body, and that is how the body also changes at death. And then the other example of clothes. So the eternal soul discards obsolete physical bodies to accept new ones. So it's a continuity, eternal individuality, the continuity this which is being highlighted. So those who are dhira, they are not bewildered by the change. They know that it is the nature of the soul and the nature of the body, and they are both acting according to their respective natures. There is no cessation of existence. You as a soul will always exist. There is no death. So the lamentation, the shoka, is entirely illogical. Hmm. So Sri Krishna gives, okay, this is coming a little, yeah, let's see this as well. So one, the analogy of changing of bodies in this life. So, we constantly observe death of our own younger bodies without losing that identity. So that is the micro example. And at a macro level, just as we discard clothes for a new one, we discard a degraded physical body to attain a new one. So in both these cases, the dhira, as we discussed, dhira just understands what is happening. My karmas are maturing. It's just a play of karma. It's the algorithm of karma which is taking its course. There is nothing to be bewildered. In fact, getting a new, fresh body should be a cause of jubilation, not grief. Transference of the atomic individual soul to another body is made possible by the grace of the supersoul. So, it also shows that, okay, you are constant, but you are not independent. The fact that you are getting the next deha is due to the law of karma, which is set by the Ishwar. So even your deha, everything that you're getting is in the superintendence of Ishvara. The super soul fulfills the desire of the atomic soul as one friend fulfills the desire of another. And in Mundaka Upanishad, as well as in Shvetashvatara Upanishad, there is this example of two birds sitting on a tree. One is the enjoyer bird, another is the observer bird. So in the same body, which is like compared to a tree, there are two birds. The two birds are Atma and Paramatma. The Atma is the enjoyer bird. It's very interested out of raga and dvesh. They want to taste every object, every fruit in the tree. Some fruits are sweet, some fruit are bitter. And they are going through this experience of sukha and dukkha. Whereas the Paramatma bird, what is the Paramatma bird doing? Is the Paramatma bird also eating fruits? No. The Paramatma bird is only observing and sanctioning, giving permission. Yeah, because we might desire so many things, but we cannot get everything we desire. We get what we deserve. That is the law of karma. So who is supervising the law of karma? Paramatma. So the Paramatma is observer and approver. Okay, you have the requisite karma to get it, so you gain it. But later, the topic of agency will come up. Who is then acting? Is the soul acting or is the super soul acting? Or is it the body which is acting? So that is a topic which we will tackle later. There are three doers. So for now, we are just understanding that we are getting new bodies. That is also happening in the control of super soul. Forgetfulness of this relationship by the atomic soul is the cause of one's changing his position from one tree to another. So we forget our relationship between Atma and Paramatma. Therefore, we have to take a new deha because karma starts acting upon us. Arjuna agreed to do by voluntary surrender unto Krishna for instruction. So as soon as one accepts that, okay, I surrender to Paramatma, then our knowledge is restored, then our relationship is re-established. The subordinate bird immediately becomes free of all lamentations. So that is the way. So the enjoyer bird has forgotten its relationship with the observer bird. That is the cause of samsara. That is the cause of shoka. So the Upanishads are so profound. And Srila Prabhupada gives one more verse. And because of this forgetfulness, the enjoyer bird is engrossed with anxiety and moroseness. So we want to overcome anxiety and stress. It can be solved only at a existential level. Everything else is symptomatic. So if you want to overcome anxiety and moroseness, shoka, you have to re-establish your relationship with Paramatma. Then you understand your identity, your role. Everything that we have discussed falls in place. So now you understand why spiritual philosophy is so important. People are living their lives without any of this understanding. That's so reckless. So Krishna has now turned his face towards his eternal friend. So the enjoyer bird had turned its face away from the observer bird and was engrossed in enjoying objects of this world. But when the enjoyer bird realizes, oh, I have an eternal relationship with the observer bird, let me re-establish that. Then you overcome all lamentation and anxiety. Okay, so Arjun should in fact be happy that Bhishma and Drona will get new bodies. In fact, they'll get spiritual bodies because they are such pure souls. Okay, let's take on two more verses just to have some coverage. We've already discussed this. Nainam chindanti shastrani, nainam dahati pavakaha, nainam na chainam kledyanti apo, na shoshyanti marutaha. So the soul can never be cut into pieces by any weapon, nor burned by fire, nor moistened by water, nor withered by the wind. So further attributes explaining the same principle. Yeah, if the weapon are made up of matter, how can weapons made up of matter harm the soul which is spiritual? So Prabhupada talks of fire weapons, nuclear weapons, but all of them are still material. They cannot touch the soul. Prabhupada also talks of the Mayavadi cannot explain how the individual soul came into existence simply by ignorance and consequently became covered by illusory energy. We have already discussed this. That Brahman, under the influence of Maya, becomes a jiva. So it is never possible to cut individual souls. Which instrument will you use to cut souls? Rather, the individual souls are eternally separated parts of the Supreme Soul. What did we see in verse 20? The soul is Purana. It's ancient. It's Nitya. It cannot be cut. They are Sanatan. So Sanatan Dharma comes from the nature of the soul. Our nature is eternal, Sanatan. And the philosophy and practice around that identity of the eternal soul is called Sanatan Dharma. How many of those who are making, big slogans have read the books? So our own tradition needs to become more aware of why are we Sanatan. Then we can, present. Otherwise, it will just remain so superficial. So we are Sanatan, but the problem with us is that we are Anu. And because we are Anu, we are prone to ignorance. We are prone to be covered by avidya. And then we get separated from Paramatma. And here Prabhupada gives that example of sparks of a fire. They are prone to be extinguished when out of the fire. Okay. So we are eternally parts of the Supreme. Even after being liberated from illusion, we will have a separate identity, eternal individuality, and eternal plurality. We have spent enough time discussing these concepts. Arjun became liberated by the knowledge received from Krishna, but he never became one with Krishna. By the end of the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna doesn't say, Arjun, now you have become me. So very easy to, get carried away in the philosophy of as soon as I achieve enlightenment, I'll become Bhagwan only. That means you have not read the books actually. Achedyoyam adhyoyam akledyo shoshya evacha nitya sarvagata sthanur achaloyam sanatanaha. The individual soul is unbreakable and insoluble and can be neither burned nor dried. He is everlasting, present everywhere, unchangeable, immovable, and eternally the same. So all these qualities, they prove that the individual soul is eternally the atomic particle of the spirit whole of Paramatma. It remains the same atom eternally without change. So therefore, it's very difficult to apply Advaita understanding in these verses of Bhagavad Gita. Yeah. Bhagavad Gita makes it very difficult to explain the Advaita Vedanta conclusions. So upon liberation, you retain your identity as an atomic soul. You might choose to exist in Brahma Jyoti. That's fine, but you don't become Bhagwan. That's two different things. You can get Nirvan Moksha. Nirvan Moksha means you are just floating as an atom in the effulgence of Bhagwan, Brahma Jyoti. But that still is not the same as becoming Bhagwan. And an interesting attribute of the soul here is Sarvagata, means all pervading, which means all over the universe you will find souls. From the highest planet to the lowest planet, souls are everywhere because Brahmaji, according to each soul's prior karma, that decide which deha they get and which destination or which planet they should be sent to. So souls are present everywhere. They are pervading the whole universe. Paramatma is also all pervading, but in a different sense. Souls are all pervading in a collective sense. Yeah, that souls can be found everywhere, even within fire. Sarvagata means living everywhere. Okay, we'll stop here. Thank you very much. Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki jai. Shri Krishna Bhagavan ki jai. Hare Krishna Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Babuji.
Thank you very